Kia ora and welcome to day 30 of Month Done and a month of mindful moments with tangling. If you're with me on this penultimate day, congratulations on getting to our wonderful day 30. I'm looking forward to finishing this project with you. Today's tangle is one called Mak-Rah-Mee by Michele Beauchamp, and it's a fabulous one for making connections. You can put it at the end of any holly bough or a rookus, or any tangle indeed that starts with a couple of stem lines together. I have a couple of stem lines left over from where I carried on bales from the day before, and they're fabulous tangulations. But this one starts with using a tangle called Kiko, but instead of doing a whole series of squares, we're just going to do 4. So just somewhere, draw 4 lines. I like to pop a little bit of a curve line on them. However, they do work as if you want to do them straight as well. And then Kiko involves just drawing some little lines, 1, 2, 3, that just go off the end. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to follow that same curve line, that same stroke as I've got on my original one. 2, 3. If you've done it straight, this works just as well. 1, 2, 3. Just rotate your tile or your page as you do it, and you can do that same repetitive stroke. And then we're going to turn it into a knot. So what we just do here is just take a little curved line and just bounce from the end of the line to the end of the next line, just closing those off to create a knot. Mak-Rah-Mee gets its name from Mak-Rah-Mee, and so we're just thinking about that little knotted area, that knot that you do with the yarn to close it off. Just little lines that bounce from one end of the line and join on to bounce to the next. We've created our knot. What comes next with this one just reminds me of this little knot Mak-Rah-Mee note that I've got here. If you look here, it's exactly the same as what we've drawn. However, what comes out of here is some yarn, and you'll notice it goes through here and comes out behind the other side. So if we leave this knot here for a moment and just work on this one, you can see these lines here are like the yarn, and they just come underneath these ones and head off to the edge. In my case, I'm just going to attach them onto the lines from the one before. And we have 3 lines going up and 3 lines across. So in Mak-Rah-Mee knot, we're going to have 3 lines that leave here, as if these ones were heading under here. But of course, you don't need to go in any type of straight line. You could indeed loop your yarn around. I'm just going to have to move the knots, it's not in the way of my hand. And you could take this and join it on to the side of the next one. This one here might head out this way, and it might come around and join on to this loop here. So you can have a lot of fun with Mak-Rah-Mee or Mak-Rah-Mee, just heading out with your yarn behind each of the knots. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and I had this one. Of course, it doesn't have to end in a knot. You can take your loop, and we could give it a little bit like my samples. You could give it a frayed edge, just like my little frayed edges on my yarn here. And so here is Mak-Rah-Mee, which of course, if you've drawn another knot, you might wish to extend it out across and join them up together, because this little tangle is all about making connections. and the yarn can go from one to another. And if you go underneath a yarn, you might just want to practice a little bit of drawing behind. Each time you reach a yarn that's already down, just lift your pen over, hover across, put it back down the other side, and join your yarns together. These little connections can join one tangle to another. Of course, they may even just head out, head around, and join back up on the same. So if you want to do a simple loop, you can quite happily do that as well. And you'll find as you head along, each of your little yarns can head out across the page. You can go behind with drawing behind. You can add other tangles perhaps onto the end of yarn loops if you like, or you can wiggle your way across. And I always like to remind people, sometimes you might not get it exactly the same. I like to remind people of something called yarn. And remember, this little yarn here, sometimes referred to as a slub yarn, is because it changes the width as you're going along the yarn. So if perhaps your little yarns between your macrames are not the same width, we don't need to worry about it. You've just drawn some slub yarns as you've gone along and drawn your macrame in. You can finish it off by just checking that you've managed to have 3 yarns coming out of your exits on each macrame knot. And I like to finish the shading off just by a little shadow shading. So just underneath, and where perhaps I have some drawing behind, or where the yarns pop out of your macrame knots, just add a little bit of shadow shading to help give that illusion of being a little bit 3D. After all, we have just drawn a macrame knot. As if you were adding a little bit of shading, like in holly bough with some drawing behind. You can do the same thing with macrame. And even the knot, where those yarns are coming out of one side underneath another one, just add a little bit of shading onto one side of the yarn, one side of the line, just to give that illusion of a little bit of a shadow shade. Got hand all of them. So we have here our little macrame. It reminds me of this little knot that I can make with a macrame. And today's prompt, I can make a difference by. What connections can you make today that will let you be a little bit more mindful? Is it that thank you to a friend, or a token of appreciation to someone for their time? Is it a promise to yourself to remain a little bit more mindful after this prompt list has finished? If you'd like to start doing a project of just a little bit of tangle every day that will help you become a little bit more mindful, and perhaps you'll begin to see patterns in things and give yourself a chance to appreciate the here and now. You can write here how you might like to make a difference and do it today, and I'll catch you for our last day tomorrow.